The Netbook computer carrier's pattern is written and requires that you get two 30-inch handbag zippers. And you're going to notice that the bag actually has 3 zippers in it, and that's because we take one of the 30-inch zippers and cut it to make 2. Because these have 2 slides on them, they work perfect for the top of your bag so that you can open it both ways, but on the pockets you only need 1 pull. So we're going to take the second 30-inch zipper and cut it in half. So the secret for doing that is to move all your pulls down to one end and then measure from your stop to a 15-inch line so that we can cut this to make 2 15-inch zippers. It's always easier to use a zipper longer than you need, and even though your pocket's only 12 inches wide, we're cutting 15 inches so that we can avoid the stops on either end. So we're going to measure and just mark across our zipper tape, and then we're going to sew to create new zipper stops. Before you do that, though, you want to make sure that you pull one zipper pull into each section so that when you get this sewn, you've actually got 2 zippers with pulls attached. So here's my marked line. I've stitched about 1/8 of an inch to the right of the line, and then I pivoted and stitched 1/8 of an inch to the other side of the line, which creates a stop so that my zipper pull's not going to come off. And then I just take my rotary cutter and I cut right through it. You can see how easy it is to cut those nylon zippers. And now I've got 2 15-inch zippers ready to attach to my pockets. Let's get those out of the way and let's work on our mesh pocket, which is going on the inside of the bag. And if you watched our zippers tutorials, you're going to remember that we've shown you this already, but let's walk through it again. So we're going to start by binding the edge of our mesh. And for this pocket, we've got 2 pieces. We've got a piece that's on top, a piece that's on bottom, and then our zipper's going in the middle. So it's going to look like this when it's done. And this is going to go on the inside of the bag, so we've got a nice handy place to put our cords and chargers. So on this application, we're going to bind both edges of our mesh so that our edges are finished nicely. And to do that, we take our 2-inch strip of binding, fold it in half and pin it. Again, I don't press bindings when I do them because that gives you a sharp crease that when you fold over may not come out exactly where you want it. You're going to get a lot smoother edges if you just pin it. So I'm going to always sew with my mesh on top so that I can keep an eye on the edges. I'm going to just sew from one end to the other with a 1/4-inch seam, and then I'll get my stiletto and press my seam up towards the mesh. So here I'm doing it on the bottom part of the pocket. I'm going to just run it right along this edge so that not to the mesh, towards the binding, so that my seam is going up to the top. Then I will take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to just stitch from one end to the other, following it right down. I want to make sure that when I bring this binding over, it just barely covers that other line of binding that's on the back, so that I'm not coming too far over. I'm right at the edge, and I'm just going to stitch from one end to the other so that when I'm done, I've got a piece that looks like this. We've got it bound from one end to the other, and if you look at the back, it looks pretty much the same on both sides. I will usually take a wonder clip and stick it on whatever side I was sewing on from the top, because if it's going to be wonky, it's going to be wonky on the back, and I'd rather not have to pay attention to where that is. So by doing this, I know this is the front side. Then I'm ready to attach that to my zipper. So we're going to take one of those 15-inch zippers that we cut, and we're going to take our little basting tape and we're going to join these. If you're right-handed, you're used to your pockets opening from left to right. So make sure that you've got the open end of your zipper on the left. If you're left-handed and you want to do that backwards, feel free. So you could always turn your zipper and do it this way if you wanted. But most of us are used to our zipper opening this way. So put your opening end over there, and then we're going to attach the bottom part of our mesh there, the top part of our mesh pocket there. And the easiest way I have found to do this is by using basting tape. This is an 1/8 inch double-sided tape, and we just take a piece and run it along the very back of our binding from one side to the other. We're going to pull the paper off Sometimes you have to use your finger to get it going. And that leaves a double-sided tape in there, and then we're just going to align this right on the edge of our zipper. You're going to notice that I'm letting my pulls hang off on this end and my stop hang off on this end so that I'm not worried about hitting those with my needle. I want to align this so I don't see zipper tape underneath, and when I flip it over, I don't want to see binding. So if I need to adjust that just a little bit to get it nice and even all the way down, I do. Then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch along that top folded edge. I'll come down to the end, stitch down, and then I'll come back along my previous line of stitching and stitch all the way across. So I've got it sewn in 2 places there, and I'll do the same thing when I attach the one on top. You want to make sure that your mesh is lined up evenly on each side. We always cut our mesh a little bit bigger, so if it hangs out a little bit over the edge, that's fine, or that's what you want, but you want to try and keep these as even as you can so you've got the most flexibility when you place it. And that's our inner mesh pocket ready to go. Next we'll do our outer quilted pocket. All right, now we're going to prepare the pocket that's going to go on the outside of the netbook case. So the first thing we're going to do is attach a little border strip to this to give it a little bit of interest and color on the front. And when I do borders, first of all, I want to make sure that I fuse an interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. And my favorite interfacing to use is Shape Flex 101. It gives a really nice structure to the fabric and it doesn't bubble, it just fuses beautifully. The reason I put an interfacing on here is to, especially when I'm doing quilting like this, if I don't, a lot of times you see those quilting lines coming through and it kind of detracts. Or if my border fabric is a little lighter perhaps than my back fabric, sometimes you'll see the back coming through. So by having an interfacing on there, it just really makes that nice and smooth and rich colored. So we're going to start by marking a line so that we get our border placed really nice and straight across there. There's nothing worse than a border that's crooked because your eye goes straight to that. So the pattern will tell you exactly where to mark the line, but you're just going to line up your ruler, and then I love using the Clover chalk markers to mark because the line is really temporary. I only need it long enough to get my border stitched in place, and then it's going to go away. Actually on this it's going to be hidden, so it's not going to matter that it's temporary, but sometimes it's not hidden in your stitching and you don't want to have to worry about trying to remove those lines. One tip I can share when marking on Soft and Stable with a chalk marker is that the width of your marker adds a little bit. So if I tell you, for instance, to mark a 2-inch line, I will take that 2-inch mark and put it on the outside of the fabric. It's probably a little different than you're used to when you're cutting. When you're cutting, you want it right on the line. But I scoot it out just a little bit so that when I mark, I've got a really accurate 2-inch line. So we're going to mark our line down there, and then we're going to attach our border. So I'm just going to bring my border from below that line, position it in place. I'll put a few pins in to hold that. And then I'll go to my sewing machine and I'll sew that with a 1/4-inch seam. After I've got that sewn in place, we're going to pretend that that's sewn, then I'll press that up and I'll stitch across the top so that it's nice and secure. Then I'm ready to attach my zipper to it. And if you look at the videos that we did for installing zippers, zippers are easy, make sure you check those out because they're going to walk you step by step through this. But basically what you're going to do is put your zipper face down on top of your pocket. You're going to stitch across this with a 1/4-inch seam, making sure that you're letting your stops and your pulls hang off on each end. And then you'll just take that stitched zipper, turn it to the inside, finger press it down, and stitch right along the very edge of the zipper tape. That's going to finish off all your raw edges and give you a nice 1/4-inch top stitching on the other side. Finally, to finish off the edge of our zipper and make it look really nice and professional, we're going to sew a binding on the top of the zipper. And that's just a 2-inch strip of binding that we've cut out of our coordinating fabric. We sew it to the back of the zipper tape with a 1/4-inch seam, bring it over to the front, fold it over, and stitch right along the folded edge. There is our outer pocket all ready to go, and we're going to move on next to do the handles.